Well, greetings and a most heartfelt of salutations, everybody. Welcome to the John Campea Show here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an honor and a privilege to have you guys joining me here today on my show. Bit of a somber note to things to start things off with. For those of you who are my fellow Canadians, found out this morning that Gord died. Lead singer of the Tragically Hip, probably the best Canadian rock band of all time. I mean, for those of you who are our American friends or worldwide international friends, you may not have even heard of the Tragically Hip. Now, they never broke out outside of Canada like some other great Canadian rock bands like Rush and the like of that, but the Tragically Hip was the voice, not just of a generation, but they were the voice of a culture for decades. And it's really impossible to highlight the importance that they played in the pop culture landscape of Canada and what it meant to be Canadian. I mean, they were just that good. And it was sad to hear this morning that the lead singer of the band passed away. So for those of you who want to know more, just go and look up stuff like that, and you'll be able to find more information on that. However, today we're here to talk about our favorite things, the world of movies and the world of movie news. And here's how today's going to go. I've picked out a number of questions that you guys have sent in to me. Now, how do you send in a question to the John Campea Show to get on air? It's simple. Just email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. That's john@thejohncampeashow.com. Send on in your question. And this is an important thing, guys. Make sure you put the word topic in the subject line. Put the word topic in their subject line, or else I won't see it. Also, please make sure to keep your email to 90 words or less, or else I just can't even physically fit the damn thing on the screen. So, last night I got to go see Thor Ragnarok again. And I got to see it with a bunch of people this time. And just as good. I was wondering if I might have like a second time letdown, like the sophomore letdown. But I went and it was just as good the second time. So I'm really happy with it. I think a lot of you guys are going to be really happy with it. Reviews drop, including my own, tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, I can actually put up my review for Thor Ragnarok, so you can check that out there. And something I mentioned on Twitter is me and Robert Meyer Burnett sat together at the screening last night. We were chatting and talking. And for those of you who may not know, like the new Star Trek show on TV right now, Star Trek Discovery, some people love it, some people hate it. And Robert and I had this idea as we were talking. It was he might have even been the one that come up with it. This idea of he and I should probably do a video, like a 10-minute video that's a point counterpoint on me as somebody who really, really likes the new Star Trek Discovery. And I trash talk this show. I thought this show was going to be terrible, and I really, really enjoy it. I like it quite a bit. And Robert Meyer Burnett, who is a hardcore Star Trek fan, does not like the show so much. So he and I thought about doing that video. So keep your eye open. We might wait till after like episode 8 or 9 to do it, but keep your eyes open for it. That could be fun. All right, let's move on now to the very first question of the day. And the first topic today is sent in to us from Raven, who writes, "Hey, John Campea, I love this show and I have a question. Do you think that Warner Brothers is going to move Wonder Woman to June 14th since it is an untitled release date, or do you think they will put a different movie in there?" Okay, so one of the things that we've been talking about for a while here is, of course, ever since Star Wars Episode 9 moved their release date, that I believe the release date is only like a week or two away from Wonder Woman. This kind of puts the onus on Wonder Woman to move. I mean, they really do have to look at moving dates and getting rid of that date and moving on to something else. I mean, it's something that they have to look at this point. Because, I mean, anything that gets in the way of, say, a Star Wars movie, it doesn't matter if it's an Avengers movie, it doesn't matter if it's another Marvel film, or it doesn't matter if it's another Disney film. You've got to look at moving it and getting it out of the way. So there have been some discussions about, do they move it just a few weeks into one way into November? Do they move it a few weeks into another way into December or into January at any rate? And so now the questions come in, well, what about summer? What about moving it into the summer of 2018? I mean, there's an untitled release date there. Could that be a possibility? I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's probably not possible. And the reason it's probably not possible is this. You're now talking, if you're looking at a June 14th date, and just let me bring up the question again to make sure I got that date right. Yeah, if you're talking about a June 14th date, You're now talking about moving a movie July, August, September, October, November. You're talking about moving a movie 6 months. Now, moving a movie a few weeks probably wouldn't affect their schedule too much. Moving it a few weeks early, moving a few weeks late, not that big of a deal. But I've got to believe that when they're starting to look at starting shooting this thing, when they can get everybody together and start shooting this thing, the amount of production time they need, the amount of post-production time they need, I just don't see how they could have that done 6 months earlier than what they were planning on. Now, if it was 2015 right now, sure, you've got years. You can adjust your schedule by 6 months, not a problem. But I just don't see how they could possibly do everything they need to do, starting when they're planning on starting, and have it all finished, wrapped, and theater ready by 6 months early in June. Now, if Warner Brothers, the other thing to add on top of that is this. I believe Warner Brothers is exhibiting to us with Justice League right now, with all the stuff with Joss Whedon and all the post-production, all the money they spent on it, that Warner Brothers is 100% committed to making these movies not just good, but making them as good as possible. I believe Warner Brothers is exhibiting to their audience that they are making their DCEU movies as good as they can possibly be, and that means sparing no expense with money and sparing no resources with time. Understanding that Warner Brothers seems to have that mentality right now, I can't see Warner Brothers going, yeah, let's cut corners. Let's cut 6 months off of Wonder Woman. Because right now, Wonder Woman is critically the only successful movie they have. So I just can't see Warner Brothers cutting corners on Wonder Woman 2. They just want to make their movies as good as possible. Wonder Woman is probably, from a critical point of view, the most valuable property they have right now. And, so therefore, no, I just don't see that June date. But you never know. You never know. Maybe they do. Maybe they announce it tomorrow. I wouldn't bet any money on it. I'm just saying, with all the things being equal, I can't see it happening. What do you guys think? Do you think Warner Brothers could move it 6 months earlier, put it into June, put it into that summer month season? Do you think that's something they could do? Jump into the comments section and let me know your thoughts. All right, let's move on now to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Joseph Thomas, who writes, we would assume The Last Jedi will, of course, acknowledge the passing of Carrie Fisher. How do you think they should go about doing this? Should they acknowledge her at the end of the film, right as it ends, or at the end of the film credits? What do you think? Well, thanks a lot for the question, man. And yes, I would be stunned, shocked, disappointed, and dismayed if we got through Star Wars The Last Jedi and there was no acknowledgement of the passing of Carrie Fisher. I would be shocked, especially when you understand how special Carrie Fisher was to the Lucasfilm family. There's just no way. There's no way. Do I think they're going to save it for the end of the credits? And no. And as the story ends, no, because I don't think the Princess Leia character dies in the movie. So they're certainly not going to do anything in the movie to acknowledge the passing of Carrie Fisher. What I think you will probably do is, even before a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, that iconic screen, that's the first thing to come up. Well, I mean, there's the Fox, that classic one, but they're at Disney now. So that we don't have to worry about that. I think even before those iconic words, a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, before those words even come up, I believe you're going to see a black screen and just simple white text come in memory of Carrie Fisher, you'll always be our princess. Something along those lines. I think that is what they will start the movie off with. Then a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and then the Star Wars logo and all that kind of stuff. So I believe it will probably happen at the beginning of the film. They're just going to acknowledge it right up front. That's where they'll do their tribute, and I think that would be perfect. Heck, they might even not have a black screen with just white text. They might even put up a picture of her as well. But I do think we're going to see that. I would be shocked if they didn't, and I would be, quite frankly, as an audience member, as a fan, I would be upset if they didn't do that. So yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. Thanks a lot for the question, man. All right, let's move on now to the next question. And the next question comes to us from one of my Patreon supporters, William Roos, who writes, my question is about your time at Collider and other companies, for instance, AMC, you have worked at. Have you ever been pressured or quote unquote groomed by others in the industry, whether it be colleagues or studio executives, asking you to give a good review of a film? I understand that when you are a film critic, it can be hard when you go against the general consensus, risk facing backlash from those who disagree. Well, that last part of your question, you're wrong. I have the attitude, I don't give a flying F. I don't care. I'm going to give my opinion, and I don't care what people think about it. This is the only way you can do things. Like, I'm fully aware that when I talk about, say, films like the original Blade Runner, and that I'm not a fan of the original Blade Runner, I'm exposing myself to criticism. Oh, well, that's fine. I could either do that or be a liar, which I know some people do. Some people lie, say the popular thing to make sure they don't get in trouble with the audience. But then how am I helping? How am I contributing to the fan community if I'm not only expressing my opinion when it goes along with the popular consensus, which is probably about 70% of the time, but how am I helping the film fan community if I'm not also expressing my dissenting opinion if I have a dissenting opinion? And, there are some people in the world that don't understand that different people, art will hit them different ways and they'll have a different opinion. And then they're big babies about it. But whatever. And that's okay. I've learned to live with that. I've learned that is the reality. But that's fine. It never deters me from giving my honest opinion, even though some people wish it would deter me from giving my honest opinion. Now, getting into the situation of companies, this gets a little bit more tricky. I can say this. I have never been pressured by any company I've worked for or studio rep to give a positive review to a movie. Honestly, it's never happened. And believe me, if some dick at Lionsgate, and I love Lionsgate, but if some dick at Lionsgate came up to me and said, John, if you don't give this Twilight movie a good review, you might not get to see any of our movies anymore. Well, then fine. I'm not gonna go to see early Lionsgate movies anymore. I hated all the Twilight movies. I happen to think the last Twilight movie, again, I know not the popular thing to say, I happen to think the last Twilight movie wasn't all that bad. And so I gave it an okay rating. I didn't say it was great or anything, but I gave it because that's what I thought. Gonna be honest. So no, I have honestly, but that's never happened. I've never had a Lionsgate or a Disney or a Warner Brothers or a Sony or a Paramount or any studio rep ever try to get me to give a movie a good review. I can just honestly say it's never happened. If they did, I would out them, but it's never happened. So there's that. I've also never been pressured by any companies that I work with to give a positive review to a movie. However, there was one glaring instance, and maybe I shouldn't even be sharing this. I don't know, but I will. Because, I'm sure it's totally different people that are there now. There was a time that, and it's funny because both of these situations at both of these companies revolved around Chris Brown. Both of these situations, well, I'm sure that people aren't even the same people at the company anymore. Back when I was working at AMC, there was a movie coming out, and our job at AMC when we were there is we always gave our honest opinions, but make sure we at least talk about all the movies that are coming out that we're going to be playing on AMC screens, because we were there to promote people going to see movies at AMC. If a movie stunk, I said it stunk, but I would still at least talk about the movie so people would be aware of the movie. There was a movie coming out with Chris Brown in it called Battle of the Century or Greatest Battle in History. I can't even remember what the name of the stupid movie was. And I let our AMC reps know, because, AMC always sent us the full rundown of the schedule of the movies that were coming out. I let them know that I was not going to be talking about that movie. It wasn't too terribly long before that movie came out that, Chris Brown is a woman beater. He beats women. I have sisters. And that I've got a real problem. Look, I'm not trying to play selective morals. Every single one of us have certain issues that touch us a little deeper than other issues that maybe aren't big deals to other people. Fine, I acknowledge that. For me, having been in a family where nobody in my immediate family, thankfully, but in my family, there has been abuse. There has been, every family, if you go back enough in the family tree, you're going to find that. But that has happened in mine. I have two little sisters that I grew up being insane, maybe overly protective of. And I've just got a real problem in my neighborhoods. Like if there was a dude in our school that ever hit a girl, the school, and by school, I don't mean the administration, I mean the student body. The school took care of that. I mean, that's just the type of society I grew up in Canada. We're all super friendly and smiley and polite, but you step out of line, you're going to be put back in line. And like in my school, if it ever got out that a dude hit a girl, that dude got taken care of and made sure that never happened again. I'm not advocating vigilante justice. I'm not advocating that at all. I'm just saying that's what would happen. That's what happened where I grew up. And, I said there is no way in hell that I am promoting a movie with a guy who beats women. Well, John, you'll promote a movie that somebody had this crime or this crime and this crime. It's like, okay, I acknowledge that. Maybe there's some hypocrisy in that, but this is an issue that is very tender to me. And I remember me and my boss, who was on my side, my direct boss was on my side of this. And my boss was very honest with us. He's like, this could cause problems. This could cause serious problems, John. Sony is a partner. You can say, if you didn't like the movie, you can say you didn't like the movie, but I mean, you've got to at least talk about the movie. And I'm like, no chance in hell. No way. I am not talking about that movie. So you can say anything you want to say. The higher ups can say whatever they want to say. I am not talking about this movie. There's no way in hell. And that came and went. I mean, really, there was nothing. They weren't going to fire me over it, and I wasn't going to budge. So that movie came, it went. We never mentioned the movie once, and I don't know that anybody ever saw the movie either. So that kind of came and went. The other situation that kind of came up was also was with another company, and it was also surrounding Chris Brown. And the company wanted us to was looking at having Chris Brown as a guest on one of our shows. And you can imagine what my response to that was. My response to that was, in the words of Vincent McMahon's theme song, no chance in hell that that's going to happen. And that led to some big arguments and big fights, and honestly was probably one of the contributing factors to me leaving that particular company at the time. So, but getting back to the original question of, have I ever been overtly pressured by either the companies I work for or by studios and their reps to give positive reviews to the movie? And I can say, maybe some other film critics have, but I can say every interaction I have had with studio PR people and everything has always been completely professional. They have never tried to influence me in any way, shape, or form to give a movie that I did not like a positive review. So anyway, take that as it is and do with it as you will. Thanks a lot for the question, man. All right, we move on now to the next question. And the next question comes to us from James Walsh. And James Walsh writes, "Hello, John, and thank you for taking my question." You are welcome, James. "The first Deadpool movie made over $700 million worldwide. And even though it was banned from release in China, do you think Deadpool 2 can crack $1 billion if it's as good as the original and secures a release in China?" Well, thanks a lot for the question, James. And yeah, the first Deadpool movie, just unbelievable. I mean, it caught us all by such surprise. I mean, the marketing was great, and we were all going crazy for the marketing, but I don't think a lot of us thought the movie would actually live up to the brilliance of the marketing. And it did. And it was a shock and a surprise, and I just freaking love Deadpool. I love that movie. Now, it did not screen in China, as many films don't screen in China, and yet it still managed to climb up over $700 million worldwide. Amazing feat. Amazing. I mean, this was a movie that if this movie had cracked $350 million, Fox would have been dancing in the streets. They would have been having parties and celebrating. Does double that. Just incredible. So, two-part question here. Could this movie get into China, number one? And number two, can it break the $1 billion club? It's important to understand in answering that question why the first Deadpool didn't play in China. The reason the first Deadpool did not play in China was because their censor board decided that there was too much graphic violence, nudity, and sexual innuendo. So they looked at the movie and said, this is too much. We don't want this playing in our country. And that's their right. It's their country. So they decided not to let Deadpool into the country. Do we think Deadpool will scale back the graphic violence, some nudity, some sexual innuendo? Do we think Deadpool 2 is really going to tone that down? I don't think so. For Fox, it was a winning formula, and it worked, and it's consistent with the character. So I don't see why China would let Deadpool 2 in when they didn't let the first Deadpool in. Now, as a fan member, would I rather them keep the tone of Deadpool that they have? Would I rather them tone it down a bit so it can get into China and maybe do even better at the worldwide box office? As a fan, keep it the way it is. The film works. The tone you have for Deadpool works. It's great. Do not cut down on the violence because the violence works. I don't like violence for the sake of violence, but it works. It has a purpose. It has a narrative function in a Deadpool movie. All the graphic innuendo, some of the mild nudity, all that kind of stuff. It works for a movie like Deadpool. So I don't want them to change that just to get into China. And I understand there would be some business pressure to do it. I get it. But look, Deadpool made $700 million worldwide. I think it'll make a little bit more this time around, even without China. So let's go on the assumption that Deadpool 2 is not going to get into China. Okay. Does it then still have a chance to hit $1 billion? I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. First of all, it'd be going against the grain. To my understanding and my belief, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe out of all the 30-something films that are in the $1 billion club, I don't think any R-rated film has ever made it into the $1 billion club. Again, I could be wrong about that. Check it out, fact check it, but I'm pretty sure no R-rated film has ever made it into the $1 billion club. I don't think Deadpool 2 would be an exception. It's going to be amazingly successful. Hopefully it's just as good as the previous one, and it'll make big money, but will it make $1 billion club money? I don't see that happening, and that's fine. This movie doesn't need to make that much money. I mean, they're probably coming in at a budget south of $100 million. How many comic book movies these days make their movies for less than $100 million? I mean, the last one I think they made for 50. So this one, maybe they'll bump up the budget a bit to 75, 80. I don't know. I don't know what the production budget is. I didn't look it up. But they don't need Deadpool to make $1 billion to be super happy and be super successful. So I think they're going to be just fine. All right, let's move on. Well, you know what? Before we get to the last question of the day, let me take my commercial break and do my daily shameless plug for my Patreon campaign. Guys, as you guys know, I no longer work for the corporate overlords. I do things on my own. Doing that requires me to do it full time, which means I'm only able to make these videos, if you enjoy watching these videos, due to the support of my Patreon supporters. Do me a favor, if you watch my videos for any period of time during the month, and if you enjoy the content I produce, head on over to www.patreon.com/John Campea and get all the information about what it means to be a Patreon supporter of mine, why being a Patreon supporter actually helps create this content, and what benefits there are for being a Patreon supporter. Go check that out, and then maybe you'll want to become a Patreon supporter too, which would be awesome. But if you don't, that's totally fine too. I'm just glad you're here participating in the discussion. All right, with the shameless plug out of the way, let's move on now to the final email question of the day, and then I'm going to go over to the live people in the live chat board. Listen, guys, you can start sending in your questions now. Just hop on Twitter if you're watching live and tweet to me at John Campea. Just send out a tweet to at John Campea. Send your question there. I'll get to as many of those as I possibly can. So with that out of the way, let's get to the final email question. The final email question today comes to us from Keith Martin. And Keith Martin writes, if they reveal a Hal Jordan / Green Lantern in Justice League, will it be one of the biggest secrets in cinematic history? Well, thanks a lot for the question, man. And yeah, there's a lot of speculation about the new Justice League, both because of some of the comments that a few of the actors have said, a bunch of casting whispers, all that kind of stuff. That could Green Lantern, it certainly wouldn't be the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern, but could Green Lantern pop up in Justice League? The question, if he does, could it be considered the best kept secret in cinematic history? It depends on the scenario. Let's go with two different scenarios. Scenario number one, Green Lantern is in the movie and he's a significant character. Like he has at least, say, 20 minutes of screen time, which isn't huge for a significant character in a movie. But let's say he's in the movie, he's a significant character and has at least 20 minutes of screen time. If that is the case, then yes, this will be one of the best kept secrets in Hollywood history. Assuming also that it's a name actor. Like if it's a no-name actor, which is fine, which is great if they go with a no-name actor, nothing wrong with that. But if it is, I wouldn't consider that then the best kept secret because it's easier to keep a no-name actor being involved in a movie a secret. But if it's a name we all recognize in the movie as Green Lantern, as a major character, yeah, I'll say that it would qualify as maybe the best kept secret in Hollywood. I would do that. However, if it's a cameo, shows up in one scene, maybe two, then no. Then all that requires was them for to sneak in a guy for one day of shooting, do one quick thing, and then sneak him out. So no, I would not consider that anywhere near the biggest kept secret in Hollywood. But if it was a bigger scale, if they were able to get somebody in, a named actor to play the role, and he was on set for a month or more and nobody found out about it and nobody knew about it, that would qualify as one of the best kept secrets in Hollywood history, I would think. All right, guys, like I said, I'm saving a few minutes at the end of the show to take your live questions, and I'm going to do that right now. Once again, just tweet to me at John Campea. Send in your tweets there, and we're going to get started. Let's pull up the first one. Let's see here. Here we go. The first question comes to us from Enoch Robinson, who writes, might Legendary pull the plug on Denis Villeneuve's Dune after the lackluster box office returns from Blade Runner 2044? I don't see why. I think I kind of addressed a question like this the other day. I don't see what the similarity is between Blade Runner and Dune. Dune is a very different movie. And if your argument is, yeah, but it's still Denis Villeneuve's movie and Blade Runner didn't make any money. Well, if you saw my video the other day, you know that I put the responsibility for Blade not making any money, and it's made some money, but I mean, it's going to end up being in box office trouble, is not Denis Villeneuve's fault. All the director can do is make a good movie, and he clearly made a good movie. The problem, I contend, was their marketing strategy for the movie that had nothing to do with Denis Villeneuve. So I think, Legendary and every other movie production company, for that matter, is looking very closely at the mistakes that Blade Runner 2049 made with its marketing campaign and will not make those same mistakes. But I honestly don't see how Blade Runner's struggles equate to Dune. And I don't see how anybody in any studio would attribute the fault for Blade Runner's box office struggles to Denis Villeneuve. So I really don't think that's going to affect it one way or the other. Let's see. Next question comes to us from eNerdlord813. John, rocking shirt today. Thank you. John, what X-Men character would you like to see get a solo movie? Thanks. Bishop. I'm a big fan of Bishop. I've always loved that character. If you've ever read the X-Men Age of Apocalypse storyline, you know what a pivotal character Bishop could be. He's not he's a very powerful character, but not overpowered, which I think makes him even more intriguing and more interesting. And when you look at the history of Bishop, from a narrative point of view, there's so many things you could do with him. So Bishop would be my pick. All right, next question comes to us from Alex Petrop BR, who writes, John, if Affleck leaves, would you be okay with a recast, or would you prefer Dick Grayson taking on the mantle or something like that? I'm perfectly fine with either. When Ben Affleck leaves as Batman, I am perfectly fine with whatever Warner Brothers has in mind. If they want to do a Richard Grayson returning to Gotham and takes up the mantle of his mentor, that's fine. If they want to recast, that's fine. Obviously, I'm heartbroken about it because I think Ben Affleck is the best Batman we've ever had. I've always been a big Affleck fan, even before all the fake bandwagon DC fans right now claim to be Ben Affleck fans. I was a Ben Affleck fan long before it was cool to be a Ben Affleck fan, okay? Anyway, so he's amazing, but I would be cool. It all depends on how they handle it. Because if they recast, but do the recasting poorly, that's not going to work. If they make Dick Grayson the new Batman, but they don't do it properly, that won't work. It all depends on how well they handle it. So we're just going to have to wait and see how that all kind of transpires. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next one comes to us from Tim Nomenson, who writes, John, movies were remade because of technological advances. Will movies from the last 10 years get remade? It's not the only reason movies get remade. There are a lot of reasons why movies get remade. Some movies, because there's technological advances, you can do them better today, yes. But there's been a lot of dramas that have been remade that have nothing to do with the technological advances. So yes, movies that have been made in the last 10 years or so will eventually get remade. Old songs get resung by new artists. Old stories get retold by new storytellers. Absolutely, it's a healthy part of the industry. So yes, at some point, movies made in the last 10 years, technology or not, will at some point get remade. Okay, let's see. Next question comes to us from 123 Brendan 12, who writes, John, are you looking forward to The Disaster Artist? Yes, I am. I'm not going to lie and say it's one of my most anticipated movies yet, but the trailers have been great. That movie, The Room, is so wonderfully awful that I just can't. And I think the trailers have been fantastic, so I'm really looking forward to seeing it. All right, let's move on to the next one. And Ali writes, John, Did you watch UFC 216? If so, what did you think? Oh, which one was 216? Was that the one with the lightweight title fight? If so, yes, and it was great. It was solid. Not a lot of memorable stuff in it, but we'll have to wait and see. All right, next one comes to us from Victor Lynn 212, writes, John, Solo is a dumb name. I can't see my friends saying, let's go see Solo this week. Everyone's just going to call it the Han Solo movie. I disagree. I think you're totally wrong. Solo's a great name for this movie. At least it's a perfectly fine name. And there's also something kind of meta about it, like Solo, single word title, Solo. I get that. I dig it. Solo's a perfectly fine title. I think probably because they're planning on calling the Kenobi movie Kenobi, which, is perfectly fine too. Actually, a lot of people online were saying they should call the Obi-Wan Kenobi movie Kenobi. And that's what they'll probably do. And I think Solo's a perfectly fine name. But look, ultimately at the end of the day, I hate the last part of the title, which is a Star Wars story, which is just stupid. But at the end of the day, who cares? The title's the title. Unless your title is completely misleading, it doesn't really matter what you call a movie. I mean, it's all going to depend on how it looks. Okay, let's see. The next one comes to us from Puneet256, who writes, John, would you wait for 27 years for the It sequel with the current child cast? Trainspotting did it. Why can't it? Well, why would you? It's stupid. There's no reason to do that. Why? Why would you do that? If you were a part of a studio and you suggested that, you would instantly be fired. There is no reason to do that. And that is not why Trainspotting did it. Trainspotting didn't say, we got this idea for a sequel, but it requires the characters to be 15 years older. Okay, let's wait 15 years. That's not why Trainspotting did it. At all, in the least. It's just that's how long it took them to get around to doing a sequel. All right, let's go on to the next one. This one comes to us from TF3100, who writes, Hey, John, do you think they will add more post-credit scenes to Thor Ragnarok, or will they just be the two? I got a feeling they'll just be the two. I don't really understand why there's more than one. I don't understand why there's more than one post-credit scene. Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of movies have had more than one post-credit scene, and I've enjoyed them. But the movie's supposed to be done. So do one post-credit scene. I'm okay with two. I'm fine with that. But when there's 3 and 4 and 5, I mean, what? Now it's just stupid. Now you're just losing the specialness of what the post-credit scene is supposed to be. So, look, I can live with 2, one mid-credit, one at the very dead end of the credits. And there are 2 post-credit scenes in Thor Ragnarok. But once you start getting into 3 and then maybe 4 or 5, now it's just ridiculous. And so I would, and now you're just putting stuff in there for the sake of putting it in there. So I'm much more comfortable with 1 or 2 personally. All right, let's move on to the next one. JT Maloney 96 writes, John, would you like to see Denis Villeneuve direct a Star Wars movie? If so, an episode or an anthology film? Same answer I give every time. I don't care. I look, any question to John, should X actor be the X role? Or should X director direct X movie? My answer is always the same. Sure, why not? If it's a talented director, then yes, why not? Denis Villeneuve is a talented director, so sure, why not? All right, next question. Sailed to the Sun writes, John, Thor Ragnarok versus Black Panther box office. Who wins? I'm going to say Black Panther. I'm going to go Black Panther on that. Next one. Perseus18 writes, John, do you think the Venom movie can still hit its release date when it hasn't even started filming yet? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it can. Nothing wrong with the release date right now. Some people think it takes 3 years to make a movie. No, you can make these movies pretty damn quick and it'll be fine. So no, I don't see any problem with it right now, especially since they moved their release date. So everything's fine. Next one. Ahmads2 writes, John, what do you think of the chances that the Emperor and or Vader showing up in the Solo movie? 10%. I think that's a solid 10%. Next question. Perseus18 writes, John, do you think the Venom movie can... Oh, I already asked that question. So, guys, please do not send in your tweet 7, 8, 9, 10 times. No point in that. Let's see. Next question comes to us from Clay19, who writes, John, after 2 major bombs in a row, could Aladdin be Guy Ritchie's last chance at a big budget film? I think if Aladdin bombed, now you're dealing with a property that should do well. Like with King Arthur, that was a movie that could do well, could do badly. And I actually did. I liked King Arthur. I thought it was pretty cool. It was definitely a Guy Ritchie movie. I thought it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. But that was a movie that it's not expected to do well. Aladdin, that's expected to do well. Guy Ritchie bombs Aladdin. Yeah, that could finish him as far as big budget movies go, unless he then comes out and puts out 5 more low budget films with great success. Then somebody else will take a chance on him again. But yeah, you're not going to see Guy Ritchie get another big budget movie if Aladdin bombs. Will Aladdin bomb? We're going to have to wait and see. Let's take just a couple more here. John Campea, could Blade Runner 2049 being up this year's Fury Road? An example would be getting some Oscar nominations. It could get some Oscar nominations. I'm not quite sure which ones. Visual effects it'll definitely get an Oscar nomination for. I think I don't think the performances are going to get any Oscar nominations. Don't get me wrong. I like Ryan Gosling very much in the movie, but the role is too subtle for it to be really considered for best performance of the year. So no, I don't see that having a chance. All right, guys, listen, I've gone overtime. That will do it for me for this installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. Listen, don't forget, while you're here, take a second, click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber to my YouTube channel. Make sure you follow me on social media, on Facebook and on Twitter, simply at John Campea. Guys, again, thank you so much for being here, being a part of this, talking about our favorite things in the world. It's awesome that we get to do this sort of stuff together. My name's John Campea. Thanks so much for joining me, guys. And until the next show, bye-bye.